Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Chapter 2, we are going to talk about the user view of the operating systems, whereby the user view is what we say is the user interface. This is how the user can have access to whatever the operating system has to offer. Okay, so basically we are going to understand two types of user interface, which is the graphical user interface and command line interface. So by the end of this subchapter, you will be able to understand two types of user interface, which is the user interface, or we say as the command line interface, the CLI, and the graphical user interface. So these will be the two main topics that we will be covering in this subchapter. So what is a user interface? A user interface is what we say is a program or sets of program that sits above the operating system. So whenever we access a user interface or we click on the interface, something happens behind it. So this will trigger, the operating system for the operating system to do something. So basically this is the outline frame of a user interface. So you have two main types of user interface. One is the GUI and the command line interface. The GUI and the command line interface. Okay, and sometimes you have batch user interface. Batch user interface is, again, if you remember in chapter 1, we were talking about batch processing. It is something done based on certain time. For example, you want the batch user interface to only start processing at the end of a certain month, or at the end of a certain cycle. For example, like you have your phone bill, your Astro bill, your Unify bill. It only starts processing at the end of the month, or at the end of a certain period of time. So that's what we say as a batch user interface. Okay, and then you have graphical user interface, where you have nice pictures, nice graphics, and you also have what we say is the command line interface. The command line interface is something in the previous, but sometimes it's being used, and I will show you some examples of what we say is the command line interface. The command line interface is users like you and me need to know specific commands in order for you to initiate a process. I give you a simple example. In a graphical user interface, in order for you to, for example, create a new folder, what do? You right click, new folder, voila, it's done. But in a command line interface, the user needs to know specific commands, specific instructions, or specific syntax to create a new folder. Okay, I'll show you certain examples in the next few slides. Okay, so when the user creates or clicks on the user interface, automatically it makes a system call. That means something is going to trigger, and in order for you to you can do program execution. For example, you double click on PowerPoint, so PowerPoint initiates, or you open PowerPoint and you click on print, so your input-output operation starts, or you can even see the file structure, or you can do some communication, resource allocation, copy, or you can copy paste files, and you can see how many files are available, and you can set up password or password to a file, and you can see which file is maybe has some problems, or so on and so forth. And all of these calls will have direct access to the operating systems over here. Okay, so again, there are two types of user interface which we're going to cover: graphical user interface and the command line interface. The command line interface, you need to understand certain commands. Okay, you need to understand certain commands. The example of operating system which uses this type of interface is what we say is the MS-DOS, or sometimes there are also one UNIX, and these are all the commands available, and this is the syntax available for a user to use in order for the user to create that instructions. Example is, for example, okay, in Microsoft MS-DOS, we use the command called dir to list a directory of files or to see what files are available, or in Unix we use the command called ls. Let me just minimize the screen and let me show you how do we see, do we use this command in command line interface. For example, this is my computer. If I click on drive C, this is what I will able to see, the number of files. These are the files available. This is a graphical user interface. Everything seems to be easy. I know from this the yellows are folders, and these are the dates modified, and these are the types of folder. But in a command line interface, how do you do it? So first and foremost, you go to the command screen, command prompt screen, and this is what you get. Can you see? A black color screen. Okay. So this prompt here is now at C drive under the folder users and under UITM here. Okay. So if I were to type the command dir, I can see sorry, all the folders, it's called directory, yeah. So it's called all the folders here, all the folders which are available here. Okay. This is not the same because this is in C. Okay, let's change this. In order for me to change this, or maybe I can just go here. Let me see. I go inside here. I go into users. I go into UITM, and these are the same things I see here. 3D objects, 3D objects, context, desktop, documents, download, same. This is in the graphical user interface. This is what we say as a command line interface. Okay. Let me see what other functions are there available. Copy. Okay. Let's say we want to copy a folder from. Okay. Let's say we go back to this. Okay. Let's say in this directory I want to create a folder. So in the graphical user interface, I just right click, folder, and voila, new folder, Imran test. So here again, how do I do it? I clear the screen, sorry, clear the screen, here we go, can you see Imran test here. Let's say I would like to create a folder here. How do I create a folder? Command is md make directory. Let me give you another name, Imran minus testing. Enter. Can you see? It's here. Imran testing. Let's say I want to remove this folder. RD remove. Imran. Voila. Disappears. Okay. I want to remove the folder called Imran test. Remove directory. Everything should be the same. Voila, it disappears. Okay. So this is the type of commands available. So you have two types of commands. You can, like I showed you just now, make directory, remove directory, move, and these are all available, and these are the commands available in Unix. Okay, so command language, it's a combination of sequence of commands. You write the pseudocode, you write the scripts, and automatically you can configure it into a batch file. Okay, a batch file is what you see, a file which does certain instructions, and the file structure is .bat. Okay, so if you remember last week I gave you something on your WhatsApp message. Okay, that is a game, okay, created inside the batch system. So it's why is it called the batch file? Is because there are sets of instructions to be done, and you can run this by just clicking on it, and automatically it runs. Okay, so you can refer to this link here to actually learn how to make video games using this type of syntax. Okay, it's a very simple video game, nothing spectacular. There is no color, there is no graphical user interface. Okay, it's just black and white. It's quite interesting. Please visit this link and try to make simple games. Okay, this is an example of the batch codes. Okay, as you can see, it still uses the if statement. There are certain if statements, but it's a bit different. But it helps. But the only setback is there is no a debugger for this. You have to write the code and try to run. If there's an error, only when you try to run, only then you know there's an error. So you have to manually look into your file and find the error. There is no there is no, you cannot just run in the processor and the processor will tell you line number 5 is an error. No, you have to go to line by one and you have to memorize the codes. So in the command line interface, you have to practically memorize the codes in order for you to run the application. Okay, this is in UNIX, almost the same, but it uses a different type of scripting. Graphical user interface, very simple, mouse driven. Everything, if you don't have a mouse, you need to have a mouse. It's all icon based, it's all Windows based graphical, and it's all there's a title bar, menu bar, widgets, all this. Okay, it's all. So this is how graphical user interface looks like. All the nice colors. You have the font size. Sorry, you have the folders. You know which is a folder. You have this is in Windows XP, and this is also in Linux. Everything is there. Okay, and this is in Mac. Okay, everything is there. Graphical user interface. You know what to click. Okay, if you want to view the calendar, you just click on the calendar. Contacts and Safari is for like Windows, Google Chrome. Okay, so these are the differences between the graphical user interface and the command line interface. So basically, which is more easier? Obviously, the graphical user interface is much more easier. Which gives you better control? Obviously, the GUI gives you a better control. Multitasking also the same. Appearance is well, when you have a graphical user interface, it looks much more prettier than the command line interface. Is all black screen, so that's also better. And in terms of speed, okay, GUI is better. But in terms of scripting and remote access, okay, when you say a remote access means you are in a different location, but you want to access your PC in a different location. So then you need the command line interface. The command line interface can do this. You sit in a different PC, but you want to access a PC in a different location. The command line interface can do this. There are certain scripts that allow you to do this type of command. Whereas the graphical user interface, it's not possible, and it's a bit tricky as compared to command line interface. Okay, so these are the two main differences. So you have to go through each of them. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 differences between the command line interface and the GUI interface. So I need you to memorize them. It always comes out in your exam. So basically, you need to understand in this chapter, chapter 2.1, what is the difference between a command line interface and a GUI. So that these two things you need to understand. And I also want you to look into the types of command. Okay, play around and how do you open your MS-DOS. Just play around. As I told you, how do you go into the black screen? It's basically you just, let me just close this. Go to your start button, just type CMD command prompt, and voila, you're here. So you can just keep on typing all the commands like in the slides and go. Sometimes if you don't remember the commands, there's always help command. You can look into this help button. So everything is possible here. You have a directory, you have the if statement, you have the make directory, you have the help. You can also do a print. Okay, print is also possible. You just type print and you type the file name, and automatically your printer will start working. You can also type VOL. Let's see, what does VOL stand for? Volume label. Okay, VOL. Voila. We are also, this serial number will come up. Okay, and so on and so on. Okay. All right. That's all for chapter 2.1. I hope you understand. And again, if you do not understand, please write your comments below, and I will reply them as soon as possible, or you can just message me. Thank you so much. You have a good day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.